Hey everyone, welcome to week 2 of Leadership Community. We're here in beautiful Drummond Island, Michigan, and if you don't know where that is, it's somewhere right around there, and it's the 4th of July weekend, and we're celebrating, and I hope that you have been too. This week, we're going to jump into the second week. Last week, as we met together and as we kicked off, we heard that everything rises and falls on leadership, that leadership is so important, that what you do really matters. And this week, we're going to get to the heart of what leadership is really all about. When we think about leadership, we tend to think about position. In other words, the position that I hold or the title that I have determines the kind of leader that I am. The problem with that is that you can have two people in the same position, and one can be a great leader and the other one may not be a very good leader at all. I had two different coaches, one in high school and one in college when I played basketball when I was younger. And they were two very, very different leaders. My high school coach was a guy that we couldn't wait to play for. He was a guy that we would do anything for. If he asked us to run through a wall, we would have tried it. And the results that we got were telling. We would always seem to get more out of our collective abilities. We would overachieve. And then I played for a coach in college, and it seemed as if we were more about just being a cog in the machine, a chance to further his reputation and career. And the results that we got were always disappointing. We never seemed to reach our potential as a team. Two people in the same position, one brought the most out of his team, the other couldn't seem to do that. And so what I found is that leadership has very little to do with position, and it has everything to do with influence. So leadership is about people, it's about relationships. It's about a chance to impact people, to move people from where they are to where they could be. So it's entirely possible that a person could hold a really lofty title or position, but be so focused on reaching a goal or filling a position that people just become a means to an end, and they don't see them as a real person. And then it's also entirely possible that the person who has the most impact on your life never held a title or a position at all. You see, the best leaders understand the impact that they can have on other people's lives by building relationships. There's a story in John chapter 8 about a woman who had been caught in adultery, and there was this mob of people who was surrounding her, ready to stone her to death. And just at that point, Jesus shows up and he walks in, and so they ask him, Jesus, what should we do with this woman? What do you think we should do? Because the law tells us that we should stone her. And so Jesus sort of curiously bends down in the sand and he starts writing something. And then he stops and he stands back up and he says, those of you who don't have any sin, you can throw the first stone. And so all these guys are standing there holding these rocks that they're about to throw at her. And one by one, the oldest first, they drop the rocks and they walk away. And so at that point, it's just Jesus and this woman. And he looks at her and he says, is there no one left to condemn you? And she says, no one, sir. And he says, well, then neither do I condemn you. Now go and leave your life of sin. You see, there's two things it seems that Jesus does to impact this woman's life. And I'd be willing to bet that no one up until that point in her life and no one after impacted her life as much as Jesus did. That she was as good as dead until he showed up. And there's two things that Jesus does to impact her life. And I think they're the same two things that are required of us to impact others. The first thing that Jesus does for this woman is he loves her. At a time when everyone else is ready to write her off, he says, no, I see something here worth saving. At a time when everyone else is walking away, Jesus steps in. If we're going to impact people and lead people well, the first thing we have to do is love people. Not just put up with people or coexist with them, but to actually love them. And there's no better way to love than to serve. Serving shows people that you love them. Right before Jesus was almost arrested and then ultimately killed, He's sitting around having dinner with his disciples, and he says, guys, I'm about to show you the full extent of my love. And basically the next two things that he does is he washes their feet, and then he dies on the cross for them and for us. Jesus understood that there's no better way to show people that you love them than to serve them. Serving means I put your needs ahead of my wants. The second thing that Jesus does for this woman is he gives her the tools to get better. One thing we can't forget about this whole situation is that part of the reason that she's in trouble is because she messed up. She had made a commitment at one point to be true to her husband, and then she stepped outside of that. And Jesus says, look, you're looking for something, and where you're looking, you're not going to find it. So you gotta quit going about things that way. You gotta change the way you live your life. And here's how you do it. You see, to love someone means to give them the tools to get better. It allows them to move from where they are to where they could be. My son Hudson loves to play baseball, and every day he'll ask me, Daddy, pitch the baseball to me. And so we'll go outside, and when we first started doing this, when he would hold the bat by the barrel and try to hit it with the handle. Well, this makes it really hard, and so I would tell him, Hudson, you got to turn it around, you got to turn it around. And so finally he would do this. But if I were never to tell him that, and if I were just to let him hit this way all the time, then at some point he would go to a level of baseball where there would be other kids there, and these kids would make fun of him, and they would laugh at him and think, why are you trying to hit a baseball this way? And my son would look at me at that point and say, Dad, why didn't you tell me about this? I thought you loved me. You see, because I love my son, I want to give him the tools to get better. I want to teach him to do things the right way. So as we begin to think about leading by impacting people, I want to give us 4 tools that will help us do that. The first is to become a student of human nature. Now that sounds kind of big and lofty, but here's what it really means. It means changing a question that we ask. Normally when we see someone doing something, we tend to ask, what are they doing? But I think a better question that helps us understand that person is, why are they doing that? You see, when we begin to ask why, we can gain compassion, and we can begin to understand the tools that we'll need to help move them forward. You see, when you ask why instead of what, it's harder to write people off. I had a kid that I coached not too long ago, and he was a pretty talented kid, but just always seemed to make the wrong decision. It would always seem to come right after he would experience some kind of success. He would be doing well, he would be getting things, and all of a sudden he would just sort of sabotage it and make a really bad decision. And so when I began to ask why he would do that, I found out a few things about this kid. I found out that he had a pretty bad home life, that mom and dad weren't very interested in what he was doing, and that really all he had ever known was disappointment. And so he was really just living out everything that he had always known. And so when I began to understand why he was doing those things, I began to understand why he was doing it and how I could help him move forward. And so when we begin to ask why instead of what, we begin to be able to help people move forward. The second tool I want to talk about tonight is this. It's to move toward tough people. Tough people are people that are maybe a little bit difficult to get along with. Maybe they have a chip on their shoulder. Maybe they kind of do everything they can not to let you get close. And it seems a little bit counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense that we would move toward those kinds of people. Normally we would do everything we can to move away from those kinds of people. But the reason that we should move toward them is this. A lot of times tough people are dealing with things in life that you and I may not know about. Maybe they're going through something really big. Maybe they're dealing with a tragic situation, and they kind of project that toughness as a way to not let people see the brokenness that's going on inside. But the other side of that coin is that people that are going through something tough will also have a tool later on down the road with which to impact others. Earlier in my ministry career, I was working with someone who was a little bit tough. A little bit abrasive and just hard to connect with. what I came to find out is that that person was going through a really big thing in their life. Their husband had just told them that he didn't love her anymore, that he was done and that he had found someone else and that he was moving on. That's obviously a huge thing to have to deal with. And so this person was acting tough to not let people get close. And so what ended up happening was, as she began to heal from that and as she moved forward from that, she actually used that experience in order to impact the lives of so many other people that were going through the same thing. You see, a lot of times tough people have the most potential at impacting others. And that's why we should move toward tough people. The third tool I want to talk about today is to look for the best in people. Now, generally you'll find what you're looking for, and with every person there are good qualities and bad qualities, and if you want to find the good, you'll find the good. If you want to find the bad, you'll find the bad. But when we begin to look for the best in every person, we begin to see the potential that they have. Now, one person that has led me and has impacted me in a lot of ways is our pastor, John Welch. He was my youth pastor in high school. And when I think about back to those times, I wonder, what in the world did John see in me? What is it that I mean, why would he look at me and think there's something here worth seeing? I think about the things that I said or the ways that I acted, and I think, my goodness, he should have written me off a long time ago. But John has an ability to look for the best in people, and because of that, he saw something and developed something in me that made it worthwhile. And so when we look for the best in people, we begin to find the right things, and we begin to pull out the impact that they can have. The fourth tool I want to talk about today is to get as good as you can at what you do. In order to pass on the tools that you need to pass on, you first have to have them yourself. And so whether you lead a small group or whether you help out in the student ministry, whatever it is that you do, get good at it. And the best way to do that is by finding people who do what you do. And maybe they've been doing it longer, or maybe you watch them do what they do and they do it really well. So ask them, what is it? What is it about the way that you do what you do that makes you so good at it? How when you were in this situation, how did you handle it? And just by doing that, you'll gain wisdom and knowledge from those people. And you'll begin to have more tools at your disposal to do what you do even better. So get as good as you can at what you do so that you have the right tools to pass on to the people that you're leading. So as we've talked about today, leadership isn't about title or position. It's about people and relationships. So don't get so consumed in what you're doing that you miss out on who you're leading. It's ultimately the relationships that we have with people that will last. It's the impact that we make on others that will stand the test of time. So as you lead, focus on people.